Dr. Aphra is a rogue archaeologist, usually followed by her robots, Black Chrysanthemum, or one of her many exes, or current girlfriends. She runs throughout the galaxy, backstabbing, thieving, hacking, all around just being toxic, and her comic takes place in the Empire era, so we get to see her interact with people like Vader, Rebels, and a whole lot more. So her original appearance was in Darth Vader issue number 3, where her main focus was just to help out Darth Vader with his plot against Emperor Palpatine. This is where we get to see BT and 000 make their first appearance, where they mainly utilize them to torture and interrogate people. And she was such a fan favorite. Even though she was just originally intended to be a one-time side character that had no intention to develop any further, that fans love him so much that she became her own original series, which is actually a first for Marvel Comics for Star Wars. She was the first Star Wars comic original character that got their own original series running, which is a very specific title, so maybe it's not that fancy, but it's still pretty cool. So that series originally ran from 2016 to 2019, and even more popularity began to grow for her that they actually made a second series for her in the more recent comics that Marvel's been running, starting in 2020. In that new series, they actually did tweak her a little bit for her personality and traits, but it very much so rang true in a lot of different ways as well, just maybe a little bit of a different focus in some areas, which I'll go over a little bit later. So she's definitely got a lot of love. I mean, she's got Black Series figures, other kind of figures. Just generally, she's in a lot of different things. She's in a lot of crossover for comic series, like the Bounty Hunter one, which is a pretty popular one, I'm pretty sure. So she does a lot of different things, and you see a lot of love coming her way. And with the recent appearance of Black Chrysanthemum in the Book of Boba Fett show, we may actually see Aphra come into a TV show or movie pretty soon. While Black Chrysanthemum isn't necessarily only in Aphra comics, they are very closely associated, so I'm starting to think that she might make an appearance at some point in time. So now that you have a little bit of history, you probably want to know why people latched on to Aphra so much and so quickly. Well, obviously some of it's opinion, but I'd like to go over what I think and just some general ideas that I've gathered from the community when researching. So for me, it's the action. They do a lot of different kinds of things with insane scenes, scenarios, and stuff like that they throw out at us, and it is crazy. From start to finish, we get to see some really crazy things go down. And also, I think get a lot of that started from the fact that Aphra betrays so many people. They have to have all these backstabs, all this kind of stuff going on, double crossing.
We will rule over all this land, and we will call it this land.
I think we should call it your grave.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal.
So that also, I think, helps with the craziness with some of the action that we see. And with those scenarios, you can probably think that they could do some really crazy stuff that makes no sense, but what they actually do with the action, it's not just a bunch of nonsense that they throw at you. They throw some really interesting situations at you. Like, there's so many crazy things that Aphra does, but totally fit with the series, and they are actually canon. At least with the newer comics, they are. And man, I can probably go on naming a lot of different situations, but just to name a couple and not to really spoil too much, but she betrays Vader, she incapacitates Vader, she gets possessed by an all-powerful artifact, and then it possesses her back. And then she gets her life tied to some killer robot at one point too. So that's just to name a few, which is crazy. That's not even including all the stuff that Black Chrysanthemum does and the droids do alongside her. That is just a small sample of the many things that they do. And I love that kind of stuff. And man, the lore that they dive deep into is actually crazy, because some of the lore, they can throw out some stuff and it's just like, okay, whatever, I'll remember that as a random fact that doesn't ever matter. But they make this lore relevant in the series, and this is actually, there is a civilization that replicates the Force with technology. That's the artifact that possessed her. So they make it relevant. They try to show her the history with that. And they do a really good job of storytelling this ancient civilization. So they do such a great job. This is from the new comic too. So they do a great job in this comic series, both old and new. But it also does have a lot of heavy focus on her relationships with people like her parents, her friends, exes, soon to be exes, stuff like that, and a whole lot more lore as well in the comics that are thrown in that are very much so introduced or expanded in this comic series. If you are thinking about reading the comics though after this video, which I definitely recommend because it's one of my favorites and definitely a fan favorite in general, but there are some differences in the two comic series, and I'll kind of go over that real quick here for you so you kind of know what you're looking for or what you're getting into when you get into it. Now, both are really good. Like I've mentioned before, they're amazing series. They both have their own positives and negatives, but they generally are pretty similar in a lot of ways. But there's slight differences in some of the way they story tell or what they bring up throughout the comic, whether it's more action focused or there's a bit of a mix. So the original Aphra comic, it's more of a contained story. So it does have a start to finish, and it's a lot more on its own rather than with the other newer series where it's more of a mixed story where it's got bounty hunters, it's got the Crimson Dawn and stuff like that involved. It's more of its own story from start to finish, so it's going to be an individual contained thing where the whole focus is pretty much just going to be Aphra instead of just Aphra going on adventures. It's going to be about her and her story. For the original Aphra comic, we do see her hang out a lot more with Black Chrysanthemum, BT, and 000, so it's a lot more focused on those characters, while the new one's got a lot more focus on relationships and her exes. The first one does have a lot of relationship stuff as well that they mention in her progress of her character, but the new one kind of just has a ex in tow the whole time. Well, she kind of meets a lot of her exes, which is not a bad thing. Just hearing that, it's not really just a bad thing on its own. It's actually not bad. They write these characters in a very interesting way that they're actually pretty enjoyable. Now, the new one does have a very different kind of pacing to it. It's much more kind of going around and maybe a little bit more, not necessarily politics, but talking to people and interacting with people in the world instead of just immediately backstabbing them and then kind of worrying about how she is a bad person, which is what she does a lot in the first one. But we get to see a lot of action in both, like a lot of action. I'd say the first one's more action-packed, but the second one brings a lot more interesting lore to it. Like in the original one, we don't get to see a lot of characters as much as we get to see in the new one, since it is kind of mixed with other comic series. We even get to see Dirge's first appearance in canon in this Aphra comic in the new one, so that's a really cool thing that they did. And if you don't know who Dirge is, he's actually a really cool bounty hunter. So if you guys want to see a video on him, just let me know. But look up, he's in the original Clone Wars series by Tartakovsky. So if you guys look that up, you can see how cool he is there. But that's kind of it for the differences, or at least the main ones that I've noticed. I'm sure there's more, so feel free to comment below with any opinions you have on Dr.Aphra or what I missed. But to recap everything, it's just a cool series, really cool lore. The action scenes are almost unmatched with any other comics or even cartoons or the TV shows, all that stuff. May even struggle to keep up with some of the cool stuff they do in this. I mean, we get to see some people like Bausch show up in this, which is kind of more of a bounty hunter appearance, but Aphra is very involved in that, so we get to see some of that kind of appear into there too. But there's a reason why Aphra was a breakout hit and why she's made such a small appearance and then turned into such a big appearance now, where she's got her own comics, her own toys, everything. She's got all kinds of stuff going on. They even adapted the original Vader appearance into a book, and there's an audiobook version as well. So we get to have somebody voice her. Don't know off the top of my head, but it's really cool. They had done so much with Dr.Aphra since the original appearance. So if you're not reading it, go out and read it, guys. It is available for purchase on Amazon. There's an omnibus, I believe, you can purchase. I think it's a little bit up there in price since it's not being made anymore, but if you really want to go out and watch it, just go ahead and go to the Marvel Unlimited app. They actually have all of the Star Wars Marvel comics on there, so that's, I didn't read that myself, I own them all, but they're all on there. So if you want to go out and read it, go out and read it. It's a fantastic series. But that's it for now. I appreciate you guys watching all the way through to the end. I just love to talk about Aphra because she's one of my favorite Star Wars characters in general. I have almost all of her comic appearances, if not all of them. There's probably some obscure one that I don't know about, so maybe not. But yeah, drop a comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about Aphra. If I missed something, if there's more you'd like to talk about, I'd love to chat in the comments. I appreciate it, guys. See you the next time.